The slap echoed across Dust Creek like a gunshot. Cole Mackenzie froze in his tracks. Through the dusty window of the general store, he watched a man strike a young Apache woman across the face. Her head jerked to the side. Blood appeared on her lip. But she did not cry. She did not cower. She simply lifted her chin and met that cruelty with a silence that carried more dignity than most men would ever earn in a lifetime. Cole had not cared about anything in 5 years. Not since he came home to find his wife and daughter burned alive while he was chasing a bounty. He had sworn to never let anyone matter again. But something about this girl's unbroken spirit cracked open a door he thought he had sealed forever. What he did not know was that the man who beat her was hiding a criminal empire worth destroying. What he did not know was that freeing her would cost him everything he thought he wanted. And what he did not know was that this girl would ask him to wait 1 full year before she could answer the question burning in both their hearts. Stay until the very end, because this story will show you that some loves are worth waiting a lifetime for. This story teaches us that healing cannot be rushed and love cannot be forced. It reminds us that the strongest relationships are built not on rescue, but on respect. When we give someone the space to find themselves, we give them the freedom to truly choose us. Sometimes the bravest thing a man can do is wait. And sometimes the bravest thing a woman can do is take the time she needs to become whole again. If this story touched your heart, drop a comment and tell me, have you ever waited for something or someone that was worth every single day? I would love to hear your story. Hit that like button if you believe real love gives space instead of taking it. Subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss a story that reminds you what patience and healing can build. Share this with someone who needs to know that broken people can find each other and become whole together. The slap echoed across Dust Creek like a gunshot. Cole Mackenzie froze in his tracks, his worn boots planted on the wooden sidewalk outside Blackwood's general store. The Arizona sun burned through the dusty window, hot and unforgiving, the way it always was in this forgotten corner of the territory. Through that grimy glass, Cole saw it happen clear as day. A man's hand struck a young woman across the face with the same ease a rancher might swat a fly. Her head jerked to the side. A strand of dark hair fell across her cheek. But she did not cry out. She did not cower. She simply straightened her shoulders, lifted her chin, and met that cruelty with a silence that carried more dignity than most men would ever earn in a lifetime. Cole's weathered fingers slid toward the handle of his Colt .45 before he even realized he was moving. 5 years of hunting dangerous men across this unforgiving land had taught him one golden rule. Mind your own business. Keep your head down, collect your bounty, and ride on to the next town. But something about this girl's quiet strength twisted painfully in his chest. It reminded him of someone he had already failed. Someone he could never save now, no matter how fast he rode or how straight he shot. Their eyes met through the glass. Her gaze was dark as Apache coffee, holding pride and pain, and 3 long years of suffering buried beneath a courage most folks would never understand. In that single moment, Cole Mackenzie understood one thing with perfect clarity. Walking away was no longer an option. Whether he wanted it or not, his trail had just crossed hers, and nothing would ever be the same. Cole had not believed in second chances for a long time. At 42 years old, his face carried the map of every hard mile he had ridden since that terrible September night in Tombstone. One dead rustler. One long ride home through the darkness. One house burned to the ground, flames still licking at the sky when he crested that last hill. Sarah and little Emma, gone before he could even pull them from the ashes. Now he drifted from town to town like a tumbleweed with a gun, earning a living with fast hands and a reputation built on broken justice. Folks called him Fast Draw Mackenzie. It was a name that opened doors during the day and closed hearts at night. He had come to Dust Creek chasing a $200 bounty on a cattle rustler named Joaquin Morales. That was the only reason he was here. But the sound of that slap pushed every thought of bounty hunting clean out of his mind. He pushed the door open. The little bell above the frame chimed, bright and cheerful, completely wrong for what was happening inside. The store smelled of tobacco and leather and something sour underneath. Whiskey, maybe. Or fear. The man who had done the hitting turned around. Silas Blackwood was tall and thick around the middle, with small eyes that sat too close together and a mouth that seemed to sneer even when he smiled. His vest buttons strained against his gut, and gold rings glittered on fingers that had clearly never done an honest day's work. On the floor, a young woman crouched among the shards of a broken whiskey bottle. She moved the way someone moves when they have learned that even a small mistake can cost them blood. Careful, quiet, invisible. At 19 years old, she carried her Apache heritage with quiet honor. Her skin was sun-kissed bronze, her hair black as a raven's wing. 3 years under Silas Blackwood's roof had carved tired shadows beneath her eyes. Her lip was bleeding. Her hands trembled as she picked up the glass. But her spirit did not tremble. Not one bit. "Clumsy half-breed," Blackwood growled, standing over her like a storm cloud. "That bottle cost me $2. $2 you will pay off at 50 cents a week." The girl did not answer. She simply reached for another piece of broken glass. The turquoise necklace at her throat caught the sunlight streaming through the window. Cole noticed the way she touched it briefly, like it was the only precious thing she had left in this world. "Problem here, mister?" Cole asked. His voice came out calm and flat, the way it always did when he was about 2 seconds away from doing something violent. Blackwood's sneer froze halfway across his face when he saw the man filling the doorway. Cole stood tall and lean, with gray eyes that had seen too much, and a stillness about him that only came from years of staring down death. "Just teaching my worker some manners," Blackwood said. "Nothing that concerns you, stranger." Cole's eyes moved to the girl. She was staring back at him now, her face bruised but her gaze unbroken. He saw something flickering beneath the pain. Courage. Defiance. An ember waiting for wind. He tipped his hat slightly. "Ma'am?" She blinked, surprised that anyone would show her such courtesy. Cole turned and walked out without another word. But as he stepped back into the sunlight, he made himself a silent promise. He did not know her name. He did not know her story. But he was going to find out. And whatever was happening in that store, it was not going to happen for much longer. That evening, Cole sat in a corner booth at the Dusty Rose Saloon, nursing a whiskey that tasted like regret. The whole town seemed to know what Blackwood did to that girl. Folks whispered about it over their drinks. They shook their heads and clicked their tongues, but nobody did a damn thing. Sheriff Dawkins was in Blackwood's pocket, bought and paid for with money that probably came from somewhere dirty. The town council was too afraid to cross a man with deep pockets and deeper connections. Everyone had a reason to look the other way. It was Martha Williams who finally approached him. She was a widow who ran the boarding house across the street, with silver hair pinned up neat and eyes that had seen plenty of trouble in her 60-some years. She eased into the chair across from him with a soft sigh. "You are thinking about that girl," she said. It was not a question. "I know that look. My husband used to wear it right before he did something brave enough to get himself killed." Cole's jaw tightened. Seems like someone should do something. Martha's eyes softened with something that looked a lot like shame. "Silas Blackwood owns half this town. The sheriff, the bank, anyone with a spine too soft to stand up straight. He has been running things his way for near on a decade." "Why has no one helped her?" Cole asked. Martha was quiet for a long moment. "Because she is Apache. Because she is poor. Because this town turns a blind eye when the person suffering does not look like them." She shook her head slowly. "But she is a good girl. Ka, her name is, Ka Whispering Wind. Her mama passed 3 years back, left her with debts to Blackwood. He has been working her like a mule ever since, claiming she owes him more every month. Cole stared into his whiskey. The amber liquid caught the lamplight, golden and warm. Nothing like the cold feeling settling in his gut. What kind of debts? The made-up kind, Martha said bitterly. The kind that never gets smaller no matter how hard you work. That girl has paid off 10 times what her mama owed, but Blackwood keeps adding charges. Room and board, breakages, interest. It is slavery dressed up in legal papers, and everyone in this town pretends they do not see it. Cole finished his drink in one long swallow. The burn felt good going down. It reminded him he was still alive, still capable of feeling something. "She ever try to run?" he asked. "Once." Martha's voice dropped low. He caught her before she made it 2 miles. What he did to her after that, well, let us just say she has not tried again. Cole set his glass down carefully. Something cold and sharp was building behind his gray eyes. Something that had been sleeping for 5 years, ever since he knelt in the ashes of his burned home and made a promise to never care about anything again. Turned out some promises were meant to be broken. "That girl," he said slowly. "She got anyone looking out for her?" Martha shook her head. "Not a soul in this world. Her mama was all she had, and her mama is gone. Now she has got nothing but that turquoise necklace and whatever dream she still has the strength to hold on to." Cole stood up, tossing a coin on the table for his drink. "She has got something else now," he said quietly. "She just does not know it yet." He walked out into the cool night air. The stars overhead bright and cold and indifferent. Somewhere in this town, a girl with dark eyes and unbroken spirit was probably nursing her wounds alone. Cole Mackenzie did not know what he was going to do yet. But he knew one thing for certain. Silas Blackwood had made himself an enemy tonight, and Fast Draw Mackenzie was not the kind of enemy any man wanted to have. Cole lay awake that night in Martha Williams' boarding house, staring at the water-stained ceiling while the thin mattress creaked beneath him. Sleep would not come. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw 2 things: the girl's bruised face, proud and unbroken, and the flames that had taken everything from him 5 years ago. Sarah had smiled just like that, quiet and strong. She had married a dangerous man and never once complained about the lonely nights when he rode off chasing bounties. She had simply kissed him goodbye and promised to keep the home fires burning. She had kept that promise until the very end. Little Emma had been 4 years old. 4 years old with her mama's brown eyes and her daddy's stubborn chin. She used to run to greet him whenever he came home, her little arms stretched wide, shouting, "Daddy, Daddy, Daddy," until he scooped her up and spun her around. He had not heard that voice in 5 years. He would never hear it again. Cole sat up in the darkness, running a hand over his face. This was foolishness. Getting involved with that girl's problems would not bring Sarah back. It would not bring Emma back. It would not undo the guilt that had been eating him alive since that terrible night. But when he closed his eyes, he saw whispering wind picking up broken glass with bleeding hands. At dawn, Cole saddled his horse and rode out toward the hills. He told himself he was just doing his job, just tracking down Joaquin Morales to collect that $200 bounty. That was the only reason he was here, the only reason that mattered. A drunk cowhand at the saloon had mentioned seeing Morales camping somewhere near Blackwood's back property. It was as good a lead as any. The desert stretched wide and empty under the morning sun, painted in shades of red and gold. Cole followed the trail through scrubland and rocky outcroppings, past twisted Joshua trees that reached toward the sky like the hands of drowning men. He found Morales easily enough. The rustler had made camp in a shallow canyon, hidden behind a stand of cottonwood trees. He was younger than Cole expected, maybe 25, with nervous eyes and a patchy beard. When he saw Cole's badge and the wanted poster, he did not even reach for his gun, just put his hands up and started talking. "I will come quiet," Morales said quickly. "I will come quiet, mister. Just do not shoot." Cole kept his Colt trained on the young man's chest. Smart choice. But that was not the end of it. While he was tying Morales to his horse, Cole noticed something strange. Fresh tracks leading deeper into the hills. Cattle tracks, dozens of them. And they were heading straight toward a stretch of land that he knew from the county map belonged to Silas Blackwood. Now, that is interesting, Cole muttered. He left Morales tied to a tree, promising to come back for him, and followed the tracks on foot. The trail wound through narrow passages between red rock walls, finally opening into a hidden valley that no casual traveler would ever find. What Cole saw there made his blood run cold. At least 100 head of cattle were penned in rough wooden corrals, their brands fresh and obviously altered, changed from honest ranchers' marks to something new, something that probably matched the papers in Silas Blackwood's safe. 3 men sat around a campfire, playing cards and passing a bottle. They wore the rough clothes of ranch hands, but the guns on their hips were too fine, too well maintained. These were not cowboys. These were hired guns. Cole backed away slowly, his mind racing. Blackwood was not just cruel. He was not just a man who beat defenseless girls and bought off local law. He was running a full-scale cattle rustling operation, hiding stolen herds on his land and profiting from other people's misery. The man who had made Whispering Wind's life a living hell was also the man feeding corruption through the veins of the whole territory. Cole smiled grimly. This changed everything. That evening, while the sun painted the western sky in shades of fire and blood, Whispering Wind sat alone in the small room above Blackwood's store. It was barely bigger than a closet, with a narrow bed and a single window that looked out over the dusty street below. She touched the bruise on her cheek, wincing at the tenderness. The cut on her lip had stopped bleeding, but it would leave a mark. Another mark to add to all the others. 3 years. 3 years of this life. 3 years of being called half-breed and worse. 3 years of working from dawn to dark, watching her debt grow no matter how hard she tried. 3 years of learning to be invisible, to be silent, to be small. But she had not always been this way. Closed her eyes and remembered her mother's voice, strong and warm like summer rain on desert flowers. Her mother had been a healer, respected by their people, known throughout the territory for her knowledge of herbs and remedies. She had taught to read the land, to find medicine in unexpected places, to survive when survival seemed impossible. And she had given this necklace. The turquoise stones were smooth beneath her fingers, worn from years of touching. Her mother had placed it around her neck the day before she died. "Remember who you are," her mother had whispered. "Remember where you come from. No matter what they do to your body, no matter what they call you, no matter how far you fall. You are Whispering Wind. You are the daughter of healers. You carry the strength of your ancestors in your blood. Never let them take that away." Had carried those words with her through every beating, every insult, every night spent crying into her thin pillow while Blackwood's heavy footsteps creaked on the stairs below. She opened her eyes and looked out the window. A man was walking down the main street, moving with the steady stride of someone who had finally made a decision. His gray eyes caught the last light of sunset, sharp and determined. It was the stranger from this morning, the one who had looked at her like she was a human being instead of property. Watched him until he disappeared into the saloon. Something stirred in her chest, something she had not felt in a very long time. Hope. She crushed it quickly, the way she had learned to crush anything good. Hope was dangerous. Hope made you careless. Hope made you believe things could get better. And that belief had nearly gotten her killed once before. But still, the way he had tipped his hat, the way he had called her ma'am, like she deserved respect, the quiet fury in his eyes when he looked at Blackwood. Maybe not all strangers were the same. Touched her necklace again and whispered a prayer her mother had taught her long ago. A prayer for strength, a prayer for courage, a prayer that someday, somehow, she would find a way to be free. Downstairs, she heard Blackwood's voice, loud and angry, complaining about something to one of his men. In the morning, he would find some excuse to punish her again. He always did. But tonight, for just a few minutes, Ka allowed herself to imagine a different life. A life where she answered to no one. A life where her mother's necklace meant something more than a memory of loss. She fell asleep with that dream wrapped around her like a blanket, fragile and warm. She did not know that the stranger in the saloon was, at that very moment, writing a letter to the United States Marshal. She did not know that he had found evidence that could destroy Silas Blackwood forever. And she did not know that in 3 days' time, her whole world was about to change. Cole sealed the letter and paid a boy a silver dollar to ride to the nearest telegraph office. The message would reach the marshal's office in Phoenix by tomorrow afternoon. Then he sat back and started to plan. He knew he was playing a dangerous game. Blackwood had money, power, and men with guns. Cole had a reputation and a fast draw. The odds were not exactly in his favor, but Cole had something else too, something Blackwood could never understand. He had nothing left to lose, and that made him the most dangerous man in Dust Creek. Martha Williams appeared at his table with a fresh bottle of whiskey. "On the house," she said quietly. "Whatever you are planning, I hope it works." Cole poured himself a drink. "It will work," he said, "or it will not. Either way, that girl is walking out of here free." Martha studied him for a long moment. "You remind me of my husband," she finally said. "He died trying to do the right thing, too." Cole raised his glass. "Then he died well." Martha shook her head sadly and walked away. Cole drank alone, watching the door, waiting for whatever came next. Outside, the desert wind picked up, carrying dust and tumbleweeds through the empty streets. Change was coming to Dust Creek, and Silas Blackwood had no idea what was about to hit him. 3 days passed like 3 years. Cole spent them watching, waiting, learning everything he could about Silas Blackwood's operation. He followed the supply wagons that came and went from Blackwood's property. He counted the hired guns. He mapped the back roads and escape routes. He talked to anyone who would talk, buying drinks for cowboys and shop clerks until he knew Blackwood's schedule better than the man knew it himself. And every day he found some excuse to walk past the general store, just to catch a glimpse of her. Ka was always there, sweeping the porch or stacking boxes or doing whatever menial task Blackwood had assigned her. She worked with her head down, her movements quick and efficient, like someone who had learned that being noticed only brought pain. But once, on the second day, their eyes met through the window. She did not smile. She did not wave. She simply held his gaze for 3 long seconds. And in those seconds, Cole saw everything. The fear she could not hide. The hope she was afraid to feel. The question burning behind her dark eyes. "Are you really going to help me?" Cole tipped his hat, just like before. Her lips twitched, almost a smile. Then Blackwood's voice barked something from inside, and she looked away, and the moment was gone. But it was enough. It was enough to tell Cole that his plan was worth the risk, that this girl was worth fighting for, even if he did not fully understand why. On the morning of the 3rd day, Cole retrieved Joaquin Morales from where he had left him tied in the canyon. The rustler had spent 3 days without food or water, and he was more than ready to cooperate. "I will tell you everything," Morales croaked. "Just give me some water, please." Cole handed him a canteen. "Start talking." The story that poured out confirmed everything Cole had suspected and more. Blackwood had been running stolen cattle through his property for almost 5 years. He had connections to rustling gangs across 3 territories. He paid off sheriffs and judges and anyone else who got in his way. And when payoffs did not work, well, people had a way of disappearing in the desert. The last man who tried to expose him ended up at the bottom of an abandoned mine shaft, Morales said, his voice shaking. I saw them do it. That is why I ran. I knew too much, and Blackwood knew I knew. Cole listened to all of it. Then he tied Morales back on the horse and rode into town. High noon burned bright over Dust Creek when Cole Mackenzie stepped into Blackwood's general store for the second time. But this time he did not come as a customer. He came with purpose. He came with a rustler tied over his horse outside, visible to anyone who cared to look. And he came ready to finish something that had been building from the moment he saw Ka, Whispering Wind, take a beating she did not deserve. The store was crowded today. Half a dozen customers milled between the shelves, picking through supplies and pretending not to notice the tension in the air. Ka stood behind the counter, her face carefully blank, her hands busy sorting penny candy into glass jars. When she saw Cole, her hands stopped moving. Blackwood emerged from the back room, his face already twisted into a scowl. You again, he spat. I thought I told you to mind your own business. Cole walked to the counter with slow, deliberate steps. His spurs jingled softly against the wooden floor. Every eye in the store followed him. I hear you have got a worker who owes you a debt, Cole said. His voice carried through the room, calm and clear as mountain water. I am here to settle it. Blackwood's eyes narrowed. She ain't for sale, stranger. Cole smiled. It was not a friendly smile. Everything is for sale, Mr. Blackwood. The question is whether you want cash or lead. The room went very quiet. Someone near the door slipped outside, probably running to fetch the sheriff. Cole did not care. He wanted witnesses for what came next. Blackwood puffed out his chest, trying to look bigger than he felt. $300, he said loudly, and damages for disrupting my business. Cole reached into his vest and pulled out a folded paper. He held it up so everyone could see the official seal at the bottom. I took a ride up to the county seat yesterday, he said conversationally. Had a nice chat with the territorial judge. Turns out debt bondage was outlawed in this territory near on 10 years ago. He tossed the paper onto the counter, which means your contract is not worth the paper it is written on. That girl does not owe you a single cent. Blackwood's face went from red to purple. His hand started moving toward the pistol at his hip. Cole's Colt .45 cleared leather faster than a rattlesnake's strike. The barrel pressed against Blackwood's forehead before the store owner's fingers even touched his weapon. The room erupted in gasps and murmurs. I would not, Cole said softly. See, I found your little operation up in the hills, the stolen cattle, the altered brands, the hired guns. I have already sent word to the United States Marshal in Phoenix. They should be here by sundown tomorrow with a warrant for your arrest. Blackwood's face went white. His mouth opened and closed like a landed fish. You have got no proof, he finally stammered. Cole jerked his head toward the door. The man tied to my horse out there has plenty. Sang like a canary once I explained his options. For a long moment, nobody moved. The customers stood frozen, afraid to breathe. Ka gripped the edge of the counter, her knuckles pale. Then she stepped forward. She moved with the smooth grace of wind over stone, flowing around the counter to stand beside Cole. In her hand she held a thin-bladed Apache knife, the kind a woman kept hidden until she had no choice left. I do not need anyone to buy my freedom, she said. Her voice was steady and strong, nothing like the quiet whisper Cole had expected. I was never his property. Blackwood took a step backward, fear flickering in his small eyes. Now hold on. Just hold on a minute. We can work this out. This ends now, Cole said. The girl walks free. She gets her wages for the last 3 years, every cent you should have paid her. And you pray the marshal is feeling merciful when he shows up, because I surely am not. The door burst open. Sheriff Dawkins came rushing in, his hand on his gun, his face red from running. What in blazes is going on here? The sheriff demanded. Cole kept his eyes on Blackwood. Just settling a business dispute, Sheriff. Unless you want to explain to the U.S. Marshal why you have been looking the other way while your biggest taxpayer runs a cattle-rustling operation." Dawkins froze. His eyes darted to Blackwood, then to Cole, then to the crowd of witnesses watching everything. Cole smiled coldly. "I have got names, Sheriff. Dates, amounts, everything a federal prosecutor would need to put you away for 20 years. So here is what is going to happen. You are going to stand there like a good little lawman. This girl is going to walk out that door a free woman, and when the marshals arrive tomorrow, you are going to cooperate fully with their investigation, understood?" The sheriff swallowed hard. He looked at Blackwood one more time, then slowly removed his hand from his gun. "I do not want any trouble," Dawkins muttered. "Smart man," Cole said. He lowered his Colt, but did not holster it. With his free hand, he reached into his saddlebag and pulled out a pouch of coins. He counted out $100 in gold and silver, stacking them neatly on the counter. 3 years' wages, he said to Ka. "It is not as much as you deserve, but it will get you started." Ka stared at the money. Then she looked up at Cole with something shining in her dark eyes. "Why are you doing this?" she whispered. Cole holstered his gun. "Because everyone deserves a second chance," he said simply. "Even a broken-down bounty hunter who forgot how to believe in anything." 2 hours later, Dust Creek watched something it had never seen before. Whispering Wind rode out of town on a gentle mare, her back straight and her head high. The turquoise necklace caught the afternoon sun, gleaming like a promise. Silas Blackwood stood on his porch, watching her go with impotent rage boiling in his face. The sheriff stood beside him, carefully not meeting anyone's eyes. And Cole Mackenzie rode at Ka's side, his gray gaze fixed on the horizon ahead. The desert stretched wide before them, open and endless, and full of possibility. Ka was free. For the first time in 3 years, she was truly free. They rode in silence for hours. The town of Dust Creek disappeared behind them, swallowed by the vastness of the Arizona desert. Ka kept her guard up, riding with her spine straight and her eyes constantly scanning the terrain. 3 years under Blackwood's roof had taught her to never let her defenses down. Too many men offered help with one hand and took something with the other. Cole sensed her wariness. He kept his distance, letting her set the pace, giving her space to breathe air that did not taste like fear. As the sun began to sink toward the western hills, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, Ka finally spoke. "Where are we going?" Cole nodded toward the distant mountains. "San Carlos. Martha told me that is where your mother's people are. I figure you might want to go home." Ka's hands tightened on the reins. Home. She had not thought of that place as home in a very long time. Her mother had left the reservation before Ka was born, seeking a different life, a life that had eventually led her to a small cabin on the outskirts of Dust Creek and a debt to a cruel man. "You did not have to do any of this," Ka said quietly. "Yes, I did," Cole answered. She studied his profile in the fading light, the hard lines of his face, the gray at his temples, the weight he carried in his shoulders, invisible but undeniable. "Why?" she asked. Cole was quiet for a long moment. The horse's hooves made soft sounds against the packed earth. A hawk circled overhead, riding the thermal currents with effortless grace. 5 years ago, he finally said, I had a wife and daughter, Sarah and Emma." He paused, and Ka saw something flicker across his face. Pain, old and deep. "I was a bounty hunter even then, always riding off to chase some outlaw, always promising I would be back soon. Sarah never complained. She just smiled and kissed me goodbye and told me to come home safe." Ka said nothing. She recognized the tone in his voice, the sound of someone opening a wound that had never properly healed. "One night in September, I was tracking a rustler near Tombstone. Should have been a simple job, a few days at most. But the trail went cold and I kept pushing, kept telling myself I was almost there." Cole's jaw tightened. "I was gone for 2 weeks. The desert wind picked up, carrying the scent of sage and dust. When I finally got back, the house was burned to the ground. Cole's voice went flat, emotionless, like he was reading from a report. Someone had come while I was gone. Bandits, probably, looking for easy pickings. Sarah and Emma. They did not make it out. Ka felt her heart crack open. "I'm so sorry." Cole shook his head. I told myself that some things cannot be fixed. Some people cannot be saved. I spent 5 years believing that. Drowning in whiskey and guilt, and not giving a damn about anything except collecting my next bounty. He looked at her then, really looked at her, and Ka saw the ghost of the man he used to be hiding behind those gray eyes. Today, I decided to stop believing that. They made camp that evening under a stand of cottonwood trees, beside a stream that came down cold and clear from the mountains. Ka washed away the last dust of Blackwood's store from her skin, while Cole built a fire and pretended not to watch. He failed at the pretending part. Every time she turned her head, she caught his eye. But there was nothing predatory in his gaze. Just something soft and wondering, like a man seeing a sunrise for the first time in years. She was beautiful, not in the delicate, fragile way that frontier men seem to prize. Beautiful in a way that spoke of strength and survival. Beautiful in the way of desert flowers that bloomed despite impossible conditions. The fire crackled between them as they ate a simple meal of jerked beef and hardtack. The stars emerged one by one, scattered across the sky like diamonds on black velvet. "What happens when we reach San Carlos?" Ka asked. "That is up to you," Cole said. "I will see you home if that is where you want to be. If not, the territory is big enough for anyone willing to start over." "And you? What will you do?" Cole stared into the flames. "Maybe I will start over too. Depends on whether I find a reason." The fire popped and sent sparks swirling up into the darkness. Ka pulled her blanket tighter around her shoulders, suddenly aware of how close they were sitting. Close enough to touch, if either of them had the courage. "I used to dream about being held," she said quietly, "by someone who did not see me as a burden. Someone who looked at me and saw a person, not a half-breed or a servant or a debt to be collected." Cole turned to face her. The firelight danced across his weathered features, softening them somehow. "You are not a burden," he said. "You are the first right thing I have found in 5 years." Something passed between them in that moment. Not love, not yet, but the possibility of love. The first fragile seedling of something that might, with time and care, grow into something real. Ka moved closer, drawn by a force she did not fully understand. Cole held very still, barely breathing, like a man afraid of scaring off a wild bird. She rested her head against his shoulder. He put his arm around her carefully, like she was made of glass. They stayed like that until the fire burned down to embers. "Tell me about them," Ka whispered. "Sarah and Emma." Cole's chest rose and fell beneath her cheek. She was afraid he would refuse, that the wound was still too raw, that he would pull away and retreat behind his walls. But instead, he began to speak. "Sarah had a laugh that could light up a room," he said. "And Emma, she used to collect feathers. Said she was going to make wings and fly to the moon." Ka listened as the stars wheeled overhead. She listened as Cole Mackenzie let himself remember the people he had lost. She listened, and she did not judge. And somewhere in the telling, something loosened in Cole's chest. A knot he had been carrying for 5 years. When he finally fell silent, Ka lifted her head and looked at him. "Thank you," she said, "for telling me, for trusting me." Cole brushed a strand of hair from her face. It was the first time he had touched her on purpose. "Thank you for listening," he said. They slept that night on opposite sides of the dying fire, wrapped in their separate blankets. But something had changed. Something had begun. and neither of them was quite as alone as they had been when the sun went down. They reached the border of the San Carlos Reservation 2 days later. The land changed as they traveled, shifting from the stark emptiness of the desert to rolling hills dotted with juniper and pinyon pine. The air smelled different here, cleaner somehow, carrying hints of wood smoke and wild herbs. Ka sat straighter in her saddle as they crested the final ridge. Below them, spread across a wide valley, was the home she had not seen since she was 16 years old. Adobe houses clustered along a winding stream. Smoke rose from cooking fires. Children chased each other between the buildings, their laughter carrying on the wind. Horses grazed in fenced pastures, and somewhere nearby, Ka could hear the rhythmic sound of women grinding corn. "I had forgotten," she whispered. "I had forgotten how beautiful it was." Cole hung back, watching her face. The tension that had lined her features for the past 3 days seemed to melt away, replaced by something that looked almost like peace. They had not gone far into the valley when a young man appeared on the trail ahead, blocking their path. He was about Ka's age, tall and lean, with sharp cheekbones and eyes that burned with suspicion. Jose Crow Feather had been Ka's closest friend growing up. They had learned to ride together, hunted rabbits in the hills, shared secrets under summer stars. When Ka's mother had taken her away from the reservation, Jose had begged her to stay. Now he stood with his hand resting on the knife at his belt, studying Cole with naked hostility. "Ka," he said, his voice tight. "You came back, Jose." Ka slid down from her horse and walked toward him. "I came back." Jose's eyes moved from Ka to Cole and back again. "Did he buy you?" he asked sharply. "Is that how this works?" Ka's chin lifted. "He freed me," she said. "There is a difference." Jose's jaw tightened, but he said nothing more. After a long, uncomfortable silence, he turned and led them into the village. Word of their arrival spread quickly. By the time they reached the center of the settlement, a small crowd had gathered. Older women peered out from doorways. Young men stopped their work to stare. Children pointed and whispered to each other. Ka recognized some of the faces. People who had known her mother. People who had watched her grow up. People who had probably given her up for dead years ago. One face stood out from the rest. Thomas Greywolf was the oldest member of the tribal council, a man whose word carried the weight of law in San Carlos. He had gray braids that fell past his shoulders and eyes that had seen more winters than anyone could count. When he looked at Cole, there was no hostility in his gaze, just calm, careful assessment. "Ka, Whispering Wind," Thomas said, his voice deep and resonant. "You have returned to your people." Ka bowed her head respectfully. "I have, grandfather." Thomas's eyes moved to Cole. "And who is this man who rides at your side?" Before Cole could answer, Jose stepped forward. "He is an outsider, a bounty hunter. He should not be here." Thomas raised a weathered hand for silence. "I did not ask you, Jose Crowfeather." He turned back to Cole. "Speak, stranger. Tell me why you have brought our daughter home." Cole dismounted slowly, keeping his hands visible and away from his weapons. He had dealt with enough different people in his travels to know that respect and honesty were the only currencies that mattered. "My name is Cole Mackenzie," he said. "I am a bounty hunter, that much is true. But I did not bring Ka here for money or reward. I brought her because she deserved to be free, and this is where she wanted to come." Thomas studied him for a long moment. "And what do you want in return for this kindness?" Cole met the old man's gaze without flinching. "I want her to choose her own path," he said, "whether that path includes me or not." The crowd murmured at his words. Even Jose looked slightly taken aback, though his expression remained guarded. Thomas nodded slowly. "You speak well, Cole Mackenzie, but words are easy, actions are harder." He gestured toward a large adobe building at the edge of the village. "You will stay as our guest for 3 days. In that time, Ka will decide her future for herself. If she chooses to stay with her people, you will leave peacefully. If she chooses to go with you, she goes freely. Is this acceptable?" Cole bowed his head. It is more than acceptable. It is more than I deserve. Then it is settled. Thomas turned to the crowd. Our daughter has come home. Tonight, we feast. The feast that evening was unlike anything Cole had experienced in his years of drifting. The whole village gathered around a great bonfire, passing plates of roasted meat and corn cakes and stewed beans. Children performed traditional dances, while drums beat a steady rhythm that seemed to pulse in time with the earth itself. Cole sat apart from the main celebration, watching Ka reunite with people she had not seen in years. She laughed for the first time since he had known her, a sound like water over smooth stones. She embraced old women who wept at the sight of her. She knelt to accept flowers from children too young to remember her, but old enough to know she belonged. She was home. She was whole. She was becoming, before his eyes, the woman she was always meant to be. And Cole Mackenzie realized, with a pain that cut deeper than any knife, that he might have to let her go. Martha Williams had been right. He reminded her of her husband, a man who did brave, stupid things and got himself killed. But maybe that was not such a bad way to be. Late in the evening, Ka appeared at his side. She carried 2 cups of something warm and fragrant. "You are not dancing," she said, handing him one of the cups. Cole accepted it with a small smile. Never learned how. Ka sat down beside him, close enough that their shoulders touched. The fire painted golden highlights in her dark hair. "Thank you," she said softly, "for bringing me here. For everything. You do not owe me thanks. I know." She took a sip from her cup. "But I'm giving it anyway." They sat together in comfortable silence, watching the flames dance against the dark sky. The drums had slowed to a gentler rhythm, and somewhere nearby, an old man was singing in a language Cole did not understand, but felt in his bones. 3 days, Cole thought. He had 3 days to convince her that he was worth choosing. Or 3 days to accept that she deserved better than a broken-down bounty hunter with blood on his hands and ghosts in his heart. Either way, he was grateful for the chance. The 3 days passed faster than Cole wanted them to. He spent them learning the rhythms of reservation life, the way the community moved together like a single living thing, learning the names and faces of Ka's people, the stories they told, the traditions they kept alive against all odds. He helped where he could, chopped firewood for elderly widows, repaired a broken corral fence, taught a group of curious boys how to track deer in the hills. He worked hard and spoke little, letting his actions speak louder than any words could. The council elders watched him with careful eyes. Jose Crow Feather watched him with barely concealed resentment. But Ka watched him with something else entirely. On the second day, Cole found her sitting by the stream, her feet dangling in the cool water. She had woven turquoise beads into her hair, a traditional style that made her look like she had never left this place. "It suits you," Cole said, settling onto the bank beside her. "The beads." Ka touched her hair self-consciously. "My mother used to do this for me when I was little. I had forgotten how until yesterday." They sat together listening to the water sing over the stones. Somewhere upstream, a flock of wild geese took flight, their cries echoing across the valley. "You are thinking about staying," Cole said. It was not a question. Ka nodded slowly. "I am thinking about a lot of things." Cole picked up a smooth stone and turned it over in his fingers. "You should stay. These are your people. This is where you belong." Ka looked at him sharply. "Is that what you want?" Cole met her gaze. "What I want does not matter. What matters is what is right for you." Ka shook her head. "You do not get to decide that." She pulled her feet from the water and turned to face him fully. "What do you want, Cole Mackenzie? Tell me the truth." Cole was silent for a long moment. The stone felt warm in his palm, heated by the sun. "I want you to be happy," he finally said. "I want you to have a life where no one hurts you again. I want to wake up every morning knowing you are safe and free and living the life you deserve. He paused, his voice dropping lower. And I want to be part of that life. God help me, I do. But not if staying with me means losing who you are. Ka's eyes glistened. Why? Why what? Why do you care so much? We have known each other less than a week. You do not know me. You do not know what I have done, what I have survived, what I dream about in the dark. Cole set the stone down carefully. I know enough, he said. I know you are stronger than anyone I have ever met. I know you carry your mother's spirit in that necklace around your neck. I know you smile when you think no one is watching. And I know that when I look at you, something that has been dead inside me for 5 years starts to wake up again. Ka blinked rapidly, fighting back tears. You're a fool, Cole Mackenzie. Cole smiled sadly. Never said I was not. They sat in silence as the afternoon shadows lengthened across the water. Ka drew her knees up to her chest and wrapped her arms around them, looking suddenly small and uncertain. I do not know what to do, she admitted. Part of me wants to stay here forever, to forget everything that happened, to pretend those 3 years with Blackwood were just a nightmare. She shook her head. But part of me is afraid that if I stay, I am just running away again, hiding from the world because the world hurt me. Cole considered her words carefully. There is no shame in healing. I know, but I do not want to heal by hiding. I want to heal by living. Does that make sense? More sense than anything I have heard in years. Ka looked at him then, really looked at him, and Cole saw the battle raging behind her eyes. Hope fighting fear. Love fighting caution. The desire to trust fighting against 3 years of learning, that trust led only to pain. Give me time, she said. Give me time to remember who I am, to breathe without fear, to figure out what I want without someone else telling me. Cole's heart cracked, but he kept his face steady. How much time? 1 year. Ka held up a single finger. 1 year to heal. 1 year to find myself again. 1 year to know for certain that what I feel is real, and not just gratitude for being saved. 1 year was an eternity. 1 year was nothing at all. Cole had spent 5 years wandering without purpose. What was one more? And if I wait, he asked quietly, if I wait and you decide you do not want me, then you respect my choice, Ka said firmly. You do not come looking for me. You do not send letters begging me to change my mind. You move on and find happiness somewhere else. Can you do that? Cole looked into her dark eyes and saw the fierce independence that had drawn him to her from the start. She was not asking for promises she knew he could not keep. She was setting boundaries, protecting herself, doing what she needed to survive. He respected her more in that moment than he had respected anyone in a very long time. I can do that, he said. Ka nodded once, satisfied. Then wait. If what we feel is real, it will still be there in 1 year. The third morning came gray and cool with clouds gathering over the mountains. Cole saddled his horse as the village slowly woke around him. Ka came to say goodbye. She was dressed in traditional Apache clothing, a beautiful beaded dress that had belonged to her grandmother. Her hair was still woven with turquoise beads, and her mother's necklace gleamed at her throat. Where will you go? She asked. Cole checked the cinch on his saddle. Do not know yet. Maybe Tucson. Maybe further west. Somewhere quiet where a man can think. Ka stepped closer. She reached up and touched his face, her fingers light as feathers against his weathered cheek. Thank you, she whispered, for everything. Cole caught her hand and pressed a kiss to her palm. 1 year, he said. I will be waiting. Then he mounted his horse and rode out of San Carlos without looking back. Ka watched him go until he was just a tiny figure against the vast desert sky. Then she turned and walked back to the village, where her new life was waiting to begin. 1 year. 365 days to figure out who she was and what she wanted. It sounded like forever. It sounded like not nearly enough time, but it was all she had, and Caw Whispering Wind was nothing if not determined to make the most of it. Winter came gently to San Carlos that year. The mornings brought frost on the ground and breath that hung white in the air. Snow dusted the distant mountain peaks, making them glow pink and gold at sunrise. The stream that ran through the village slowed to a lazy trickle, its surface crusted with thin ice that shattered like glass beneath careless feet. Ka spent the cold months rebuilding. She moved into a small adobe house at the edge of the village, a gift from the council in recognition of her mother's memory. The roof leaked in 2 places and the door did not close properly. But Ka did not care. It was hers. Truly hers. The first thing she had owned since Blackwood had taken everything away. She filled her days with work that felt meaningful. She helped the village healers gather dried herbs from their winter stores. She sat at the feet of old women and learned the traditional songs her mother had never had the chance to teach her. She wove baskets with young girls who looked at her with admiration in their eyes. These girls who had heard whispered stories of the brave woman who had escaped a cruel white man and come home. The work healed her body. Her bruises faded. Her cut lip became just another faint scar among many. She ate regular meals for the first time in years, and her cheeks filled out, and the dark shadows beneath her eyes slowly disappeared. But it was the people who healed her spirit. Thomas Greywolf came to visit her once a week, bringing stories of her mother as a young woman. Stories Ka had never heard before. Stories of mischief and bravery and a sharp tongue that could cut a man down to size faster than any knife. "Your mother had fire in her blood," Thomas said one evening, warming his weathered hands by her hearth. "She left us because she burned too bright for this small place, but she never stopped being one of us, and neither did you." The village women welcomed her into their circles without question or judgment. They did not ask about the years she had lost. They did not pry into the darkness she had survived. They simply made space for her at their fires, handed her tools and ingredients, taught her skills she should have learned a decade ago. Even Jose Crow Feather slowly warmed to her again. He was still protective, still wary, still quick to position himself between Ka and any man who showed too much interest. But beneath the hard exterior, Ka recognized the boy she had grown up with. The boy who had cried when she left. The boy who had never quite gotten over losing his best friend. "You should not have gone with that bounty hunter," Jose said one afternoon. They were walking in the hills above the village, checking traps for winter rabbits. "He was a stranger, a dangerous man. He could have hurt you." Ka shook her head. "He saved my life, Jose." Jose scowled. He wanted something. Men like that always want something. Maybe. Ka stopped and looked out over the valley below. The village looked like a collection of children's toys from this height, small and peaceful and impossibly precious. But if he did, he never asked for it. He just let me go. Jose was quiet for a long moment. "And when the year is up, what will you do?" Ka did not answer. She did not have an answer yet. 6 months after Cole rode away, a letter arrived. A traveling peddler brought it, a weathered envelope with Ka's name written in careful, deliberate handwriting. She took it to her little house and sat by the fire, holding it unopened for nearly an hour. When she finally read it, she found no promises, no pressure, no declarations of undying love, just simple words from a simple man. "Dear Ka, I bought a small ranch outside Tucson. Nothing fancy. Just some good land and a house that needs work. I thought you might want to know where to find me. If you ever want to see it, you would be welcome. Cole." That was all. Ka read the letter 3 times. Then she folded it carefully and placed it in the leather pouch with her most treasured belongings, right next to her mother's necklace. She did not write back. She was not ready yet. But she thought about him, more often than she wanted to admit. She thought about the way he had looked at her that first day in Blackwood's store, like she was a person worth seeing. She thought about his voice around the campfire, rough with grief as he told her about Sarah and Emma. She thought about his gray eyes, always watching, always protective, always just a little bit sad. She thought about what it might be like to see him again. Spring came early to the reservation, bringing with it warm winds and wildflowers that carpeted the hills in purple and gold. Ka stood on the ridge above the village, watching the sun rise over the desert, feeling the first touch of warm air against her skin. 1 year. She had asked for 1 year, and she had used it well. She had healed. She had found herself. She had remembered who she was and where she came from. Now it was time to figure out where she was going. She loved her people. She loved this land. She loved the peace and the community, and the sense of belonging she had found here. But she loved something else, too. Someone else. And Ka Whispering Wind had learned in her 20 years of life that love was too rare and precious to let slip away. She went to Thomas Greywolf that evening. "I need to tell you something," she said. The old man smiled knowingly. "You are leaving." Ka blinked. "How did you know?" "Because I have been watching you, child." Thomas's eyes crinkled with gentle amusement. "I have seen the way you look toward the west when you think no one is watching. I have seen you take out that letter and read it by firelight." He reached out and patted her hand. "Your mother left too. It is in your blood." Ka felt tears prick her eyes. "Will you be angry?" "I will be proud," Thomas said. "You came home a broken thing, and you healed yourself whole again. Now you are ready to fly." He squeezed her hand. "Go find your happiness, little bird. But remember, San Carlos will always be here if you need it." Ka threw her arms around the old man and hugged him tight. "Thank you," she whispered. "Thank you for everything." Thomas hugged her back. "Go," he said, "before I start crying like a foolish old man." Ka left San Carlos on a warm spring morning, exactly 1 year to the day after Cole Mackenzie had ridden away. She carried her mother's necklace around her throat and Cole's letter in her pouch, and hope burning bright in her heart. The road to Tucson stretched long before her. She could not wait to see where it led. The journey took 6 days. 6 days of riding through desert and scrubland, following trails that wound between towering saguaro cacti and through canyons painted in shades of red and gold. Ka traveled light, carrying only what she needed: dried food, a water skin, the knife her mother had given her years ago, and the small leather pouch that held her most precious possessions. She felt different this time. The last time she had made this journey, she had been a frightened girl riding beside a stranger, unsure whether she was being rescued or walking into another trap. Now she was a woman, sure of herself and her choices, riding toward a future she had chosen for herself. The desert did not scare her anymore. The vast emptiness that had once felt oppressive now felt like freedom. Every mile she put behind her was a mile further from the person she used to be. On the 3rd day, she passed through a small town called Willow Springs. The folks there stared at her openly, a young Apache woman traveling alone, but Ka paid them no mind. She watered her horse, bought fresh supplies, and kept moving. On the 5th night, she made camp in a shallow valley surrounded by mesquite trees. The stars overhead were brilliant, scattered across the black velvet sky like diamonds thrown by a careless hand. She built a small fire and ate her simple supper, and thought about the man waiting at the end of her journey. A year was a long time. People changed in a year. What if he had given up waiting? What if he had found someone else? What if he looked at her and felt nothing? Ka pushed the doubts away. She had spent 3 years learning to fear. She was done with fear. Whatever happened when she reached Tucson, she would face it with her head held high and her spirit unbroken. She fell asleep with her mother's necklace pressed against her heart. The 6th day dawned clear and warm, with just enough breeze to make the ride pleasant. Ka set out before the sun had fully risen, something urgent pulling her forward now that she was so close. She knew she was getting near when she spotted the first ranch houses in the distance. Modest adobe structures surrounded by corrals and vegetable gardens, the steady work of people building lives from nothing. This was the outskirts of Tucson territory where folks came to start fresh. Cole's letter had included directions. North from town, past the old mission, up the valley where the cottonwood trees grew thick along the creek. Look for the house with the green door. Ka followed the instructions carefully, her heart beating faster with every mile. The land grew prettier as she climbed higher, rolling hills covered in tall grass that rippled like water in the breeze. She heard the creek before she saw it, a cheerful babbling sound that made her think of the stream back in San Carlos. Then she crested the final ridge, and there it was. The ranch sat in a small valley, nestled against the foothills like it had always belonged there. A modest wooden house with a green door, just like he had said. A barn and a corral where half a dozen horses grazed lazily in the afternoon sun. A vegetable garden, neatly tended, smoke curling from the chimney. It was simple. It was peaceful. It was exactly the kind of place a man might build when he finally stopped running from his ghosts. Ka sat on her horse for a long moment, just looking, just breathing, just letting herself believe that this was real. Then she nudged her mare forward and started down the hill. Cole Mackenzie was splitting firewood behind the house when he heard the sound of approaching hooves. He set down his axe and wiped the sweat from his brow, squinting against the afternoon sun. Visitors were rare out here. Mostly it was just the occasional peddler or rancher looking to trade. But the figure riding down the trail was not a peddler. She sat tall in the saddle, her dark hair gleaming in the sunlight, turquoise beads woven through the strands. She wore Apache traveling clothes, practical and beautiful, and around her neck hung a necklace that caught the light like captured sunshine. Cole forgot to breathe. He had dreamed of this moment, imagined it 1,000 different ways during the long, lonely nights of the past year. But none of his imaginings had prepared him for the reality of seeing her again. Ka, whispering wind, riding toward him like something out of a fever dream. She reached the yard and dismounted slowly. Her boots touched the earth, and for a moment, neither of them moved. They just stood there, drinking each other in, cataloging all the small changes a year could bring. Cole looked older, but not in the tired, hollow way Ka remembered. His shoulders seemed steadier. His eyes carried less weight. The grief was still there. It would always be there, but it had softened into something manageable, something livable. "I was not sure you would come," he said quietly. His voice was rough with emotion. Ka smiled. "I was not sure either. But the wind changed and I listened." Cole smiled back, and it was a smile Ka had never seen from him before. Gentle, hopeful, real. "Welcome home," he said. The word hit Ka like a physical blow. Home. Such a small word. Such a heavy meaning. She looked around at the little ranch, the house he had built, the garden he had planted, the life he had created while waiting for her to decide. "You built all this," she said softly. "In 1 year, you built all this." Cole shrugged. "Needed something to do with my hands. Turns out splitting rails is better than splitting heads." Ka laughed. It was a sound she barely recognized, bright and free and full of joy. "What if I had not come?" she asked. Cole's expression grew serious. "Then it would still be a good place, just a quieter one." Ka stepped closer. The space between them seemed to shrink and expand at the same time, charged with possibility. "Show me," she said. "Show me the life you built." Cole held out his hand. She took it, and together they walked toward the green door. The house was small but warm, filled with the quiet evidence of a man learning to build instead of destroy. Cole had done the work himself, every beam and board and nail. The walls were solid adobe, thick enough to keep out the summer heat and the winter cold. The floor was smooth, packed earth covered with woven rugs. A wide fireplace dominated one wall, flanked by shelves he had built by hand. On one shelf sat a small wooden box. Ka noticed it immediately. The wood was dark and polished, obviously cherished. Without asking, she knew what was inside. Cole saw her looking. My memories, he said quietly. From before. Ka nodded. She did not ask to see inside. Some grief was private, some wounds deserved silence. They spent that evening walking the property together. Cole showed her the garden where vegetables were already pushing through the spring soil. He showed her the corral where his horses, gentle creatures with knowing eyes, came to greet them at the fence. He showed her the creek that ran cold and clear along the edge of the property, good for drinking and bathing and sitting beside on hot summer nights. "Why here?" Ka asked, as they stood watching the sunset paint the hills in shades of fire. "Why Tucson?" Cole was quiet for a moment. "I wanted a place that felt worth staying in," he finally said. "A place someone like you could walk into without fear." Ka felt tears prick her eyes. "And if I had chosen not to come?" Cole turned to look at her, his gray eyes soft in the fading light. "Then I would have stayed anyway, made peace with it. But I would have missed you every single day." Ka reached out and took his hand. Their fingers intertwined naturally, like they had been doing it for years instead of minutes. "I did not come because I felt I owed you anything," she said. "I came because I finally knew what I wanted." "And what is that?" Cole asked. "A life that I choose." Ka squeezed his hand. "A life with someone who sees me as an equal. Someone who stands beside me, not in front of me or behind me." Cole's breath caught. "Ka, I need you to know something." She waited. "I am not a young man," he said. "I have done things I am not proud of. I carry ghosts that will never fully leave me." He looked down at their joined hands. "If you choose this, if you choose me, you are choosing someone who is still learning how to be whole again." Ka reached up and touched his face, her fingers light against his weathered cheek. "We are all learning," she said softly. "That is what it means to be alive." She rose on her toes and kissed him. It was a gentle kiss, tender and questioning. A first step across a bridge they had been building for a year without realizing it. When she pulled back, Cole's eyes were shining. "You know something?" he said, his voice rough. "What?" "I started hoping for this moment the day I heard you cry." Ka frowned slightly. "I did not cry that day. In Blackwood's store. I never cried." Cole shook his head slowly. "No. But your heart did. And somehow, I heard it." Ka felt something break open inside her. All the walls she had built, all the defenses she had constructed over 3 years of survival, came tumbling down at once. She stepped into his arms and let him hold her. The night wrapped around them like a blessing. Stars emerged one by one overhead. The creek sang its endless song. Somewhere in the darkness, a nightbird called to its mate. "Are you staying?" Cole whispered against her hair. Ka touched the turquoise necklace at her throat. The same necklace that had once reminded her only of loss now felt like a bridge between where she came from and where she was going. "Yes," she said, "if you will have me." Cole held her tighter. "I will have you," he said, "for as long as you want to stay." Ka smiled into his chest. "Then you had better get used to me, because I do not plan on going anywhere." They stood together in the darkness, two broken people who had somehow found each other across the vast, unforgiving desert. Two hearts that had learned to beat alone, finally learning to beat together. It was not perfect. Life never is. But it was theirs, and that was more than enough. Summer came to the little ranch like a blessing. The days grew long and golden, filled with work and laughter and the quiet satisfaction of building something together. Ka planted flowers beside the porch, bright splashes of color that reminded her of the wildflowers back in San Carlos. Cole finished the addition to the house he had been planning, a small room with a window facing east so they could watch the sunrise together. They married in August, under the shade of the old cottonwood tree by the creek. It was a simple ceremony. Martha Williams came all the way from Dust Creek, her eyes bright with happy tears. Thomas Graywolf made the journey from San Carlos, bringing a blessing from her people and a beautiful beaded blanket that had belonged to Ka's grandmother. Even Jose Crowfeather came, standing stiff and awkward in borrowed white man's clothes, but present nonetheless. When Cole shook his hand after the ceremony, something passed between them. An understanding. A truce. "You make her cry," Jose said quietly, "and I will find you." Cole nodded seriously. "Fair enough." They spent their wedding night on the porch, wrapped in the beaded blanket, watching stars wheel overhead. The air smelled of sage and summer flowers and the particular sweetness that comes after a desert rain. "I never thought I would have this," Ka said softly. "Any of this." Cole pressed a kiss to her hair. "Neither did I. Do you ever think about them?" She did not need to say who she meant. Sarah and Emma. Cole was quiet for a long moment. "Every day," he finally said. "I think about them every day." He paused. "But it does not hurt the same way anymore." Ka lifted her head to look at him. "What changed?" Cole's gray eyes met hers. "You showed me that loving again does not mean forgetting. It just means making room." He touched her face gently. "They would have liked you, I think. Sarah would have said you had good bones. And Emma would have followed you around like a little shadow." Ka felt tears slip down her cheeks, but they were not sad tears. They were tears of gratitude and wonder, and the overwhelming relief of finally being home. Fall brought harvest and Thanksgiving, and the first cold winds from the mountains. Winter brought snow and long nights by the fire, and the kind of deep, quiet contentment that neither of them had dared to hope for. And spring brought something else entirely. Ka told Cole one morning in late March, when the wildflowers were just beginning to bloom on the hillsides. She had known for weeks, but had wanted to be sure. Cole stared at her for a long moment, his weathered face cycling through surprise and hope and fear and joy so quickly that Ka could not keep track. "A baby?" he finally managed. Ka smiled, her hand resting on her still flat stomach. "A baby." Cole pulled her into his arms and held her so tight she could barely breathe. When he finally let go, there were tears streaming down his cheeks, the first tears she had ever seen him shed. "I thought I would never have this again," he whispered. "I thought that part of my life was over." Ka wiped his tears away with gentle fingers. "Nothing is ever over," she said. "Not really. Things just change into something new." That night, Cole added another line to the wooden box on the shelf. He had started keeping a journal after Ka arrived, a record of their life together. He wrote about the ranch and the seasons and the small daily miracles of building a home. Now he wrote about their child. The next chapter in a story that had started with loss and wandering and had somehow led here, to this small ranch in the Arizona hills, to this woman who had taught him how to hope again. The entry ended with a single line. 2 broken lives became one whole. And now that whole is growing. He set down his pen and looked out the window at the first stars appearing in the evening sky. Somewhere out in the darkness, a whippoorwill sang its lonely song. But Cole Mackenzie was not lonely anymore. He had Ka. He had their coming child. He had a home and a future and the kind of peace he had stopped believing in years ago. He had everything. And it all started with a slap in a dusty store and a girl who refused to cry. This content was carefully researched, developed, and manually edited by our team to deliver meaningful stories with valuable life lessons. Every narrative is crafted to entertain, inspire, and empower our audience. We believe that great stories can change lives, and we are committed to bringing you content that matters. Thank you for being part of our community.